you guys doing?
Yes, good.
So Larry and Randy were in a car accident
Oh.
going through Phoenix. I think they were going to the Grand Canyon. And there was a 5-car pileup, and they were car number 2. What I heard. 2 or 3.
He can explain it better. He gave us the whole story.
And
They are okay.
They were okay.
they're okay. That's the important part.
And they're all.
Yeah, they got banged up. You know, the airbags went off. No airbag for 2 hours.
Who is that?
And but they're okay. So.
Larry and Randy?
Huh?
Larry.
The airbags?
So hopefully we'll see them Sunday. And we're praying for a job.
Will to be done.
We're going to get free room and board.
Tamara is going to get a residential director job at Grand Canyon University. She'll get free room and board. She'll get food, and she'll get a master's for nothing.
Is that like all you can eat?
I'm pretty sure. You may want to look into that job.
That could be a lot of money right there, all you can eat.
Yeah. So anyway, and it's up at the door for, it's hard to get into Grand Canyon. So anyway, but yeah, she's got her 2 phone interviews and she's waiting for person.
Okay. Other prayer requests? Yes, Paul.
A fellow, his name is Ron, he's having pain issues, they're trying to figure out what the problem is. He's currently, prayer was requested, so.
Okay. Ron for pain. What else?
I think my call back here.
Bring it back here. Wow.
This is an eclectic group. Who, Karen?
I need to support my husband. I don't know, something's wrong today, and he's in a lot of pain, and of course, not ever going to go to the doctor. He has a lot of health issues anyway, and it was scary, and I wasn't going to come tonight, and he said, no, go ahead. And I know, he's kind of really.
Okay. Pray for Karen's husband. Others?
Remember Caitlin's friend, Kelsey, the one that was having issues, the friend committed suicide.
Okay.
And then, thank you for your prayer for Amanda Waite, the one that had the biopsy on her breast. Everything is good. It's good.
The Nickersons haven't been here for a while. Evidently, they're moving to Tucson because of financial considerations. They're struggling with all the recent deaths, so they're moving family members. So here's why they haven't been here. Others?
I have a phrase. I have a torn meniscus and it can be fixed. It's going to get fixed. My knees are good.
Good.
Meniscus. He's having an MRI tomorrow. A torn meniscus.
I used to have one of those, and now I don't have a meniscus.
Has to do with the nature of your leg.
Now it wore out. It's gone.
So what you're seeing
About
for
7
now.
months.
Disappeared. It evaporated. So,
Well, they say they can fix this, so I'm
Yeah.
taking their word for that.
They can.
others? Yes, Renee?
We have 2 employees at the Sierra Vista store where Mike's at that have dying family members and really sick family members, and they just need prayer because I don't think they know the Lord, and so they're just under a lot of stress because their family members are ill, very gravely ill.
Okay. Employees, family members at the flower store
Graduation for unsaved loved ones.
Amen. Unsaved loved one. Juanito has his first tooth.
He's got two.
Yeah. First one come through and the other one's right there, the two bottom one. So I bought him a real small T-bone. Gonna have his first hunk of meat. I feel so sorry for that kid. It's always blending this and blending that. All this healthy stuff. He needs a Big Mac.
Bacon.
You know,
Side of ribs.
Big Mac has a double jalapeno burger now. Life's good.
Oh, you tried it?
No. But I'm looking forward to it. The anticipation's the best part. Okay, anything else?
For Kiona, continue to keep her and her mom.
Pardon me?
Kiona's and her mom and that.
Yeah, Kiona and her mom was on deployment. Yeah, remember our military? I guess this is Military Appreciation Month. So, remember the military. Anybody else? No? Okay. Well, let's stand. Brother Roger, lead us in our opening prayer, please.
Heavenly Father, we just thank you, Lord, for blessing us on you, and Lord, just thinking about the military, we just pray for them. They have lots of challenges and going there and coming back, and just be with them, Lord, in all the things they do, and especially be with the leaders that make the decisions that they can be the appropriate decisions, Lord. And we just thank you for blessing us with this freedom to come here, and we know that there's a lot of sacrifice for that we can come to this house and study your word. We pray for those that are sick, and we thank you for the blessings you bless people with, things that can be fixed, and just help us to live with those things that can't be fixed. And certainly we always pray for the unsaved loved ones, and just help us to do the things we need to do. We pray for Steve's work this evening, and we just thank you again. We just pray all of this in Jesus' name. Amen.
Amen. Go ahead and be seated. The school district's coming. They'll start teaching the regular classes here next week, so
Yeah.
that should be interesting.
Did you get your copy of putting in the chair?
Huh?
Lori?
Or the Pomeranian School. Yeah, they're re-renovating their building again. So they're moving their three oldest classes over here and beginning the renovation. They were going to come over earlier in the year, but the bureaucracy has slowed them down. So they're coming for 2 months. They're renting for 2 months. And we're glad to have them. We're going to try to bless them and have a positive influence on them. Me and Snowbella, we're going to work with them. The belly will help them out. So, Ecclesiastes 3 is your text tonight. And remember we're looking at Solomon is examining different ideas. And he's looking at the folly of man. Remember way back in 1:2 he said, "Vanities of vanities, says the preacher. Vanity of vanities, all is vanities. All is foolishness, all is nothingness, all is purposeless," I'm referring to vanity. And previous to this, we've been looking at different ideas, and as we look at chapter 3, we look at a different philosophy, the philosophy of fatalism. You know what the philosophy of fatalism is? Yeah, it's the philosophy of fate. And it's not a new idea. Aristotle talked about fate a long, long time ago. And the idea behind fate is an interesting idea. It's an idea used by some cults. Rather than having actual faith in God, they have faith in fate. And so we're gonna try to look at that in regards to how Solomon speaks about it. It's the idea kind of like what will be, will be. Okay? You're familiar with that idea? You can't change it. What's that old saying about if your number's up, there's nothing you can do about it? You know, if your time's up, there's nothing you can do about it. So look at chapter 3. And I'm going to go ahead and read the first 8 verses for us. To everything there is a season, a time for every purpose under heaven. Okay? A time to be born, and a time to die. A time to plant, and a time to pluck what is planted. A time to kill, and a time to heal. A time to break down, and a time to build up. A time to weep, and a time to laugh. A time to mourn, and a time to dance. A time to cast away stones, and a time to gather stones. A time to embrace, and a time to refrain from embracing. A time to gain, and a time to lose. A time to keep, and a time to throw away. A time to tear, and a time to sow. A time to keep silent, and a time to speak. A time to love, and a time to hate. A time of war, and a time of peace. So when you hear those words, what does that say to you?
Everything has a season.
Everything has a season, okay? Look at the 9th verse before we continue that discussion. What profit has the worker from that in which he labors? When you take these things all together, what is when you think about that, okay, what is the error of this thinking? Because really what Solomon is saying is that these things are going to happen. And you have no control over these things happening. And for a Christian, that's not a good mindset. Why? Now you'll say, well, God has control of everything. Yes, he does. But if you exhibit fatalism in your Christian walk, then why pray? If you believe in fatalism in your Christian walk, what does that do to grace? What does that do to mercy? You get my idea? So, it's important that these things, remember I tried to explain to you that I like to think of these wordings by Solomon as being experiments. And what he's doing is he's expressing a thought, and what he ends up with is always the same solution, that it's all vanity. Without God, it's all vanity. Without God, it doesn't work. It doesn't matter. It's all failure without God. So in that 9th verse, when he says, when he talks about laboring, a lot of people that work incessantly are people that are very joyless. Okay? What profit has he that worketh and wherein he laboreth, is the way the old King James puts it. What profit do you have? Okay, if you work a lot, what do you make? Money. Does that make you happy? No. So when he compares, when he says, when you work a lot, it doesn't profit you nothing. All he's saying is, if you don't have God, working a lot does not do you any good. You know, in the military, there were guys that lived their jobs. I knew a Chief Master Sergeant who worked for over 30 years, retired, and 2 weeks later, he was dead. Wasn't working, didn't have enough work to do. I'm exactly the opposite. If I do too much work, I might die. That explains how I am, you'll understand that better. But the idea that work does not necessarily, just because you labor, it doesn't produce any happiness, it doesn't produce any joy. And if you work excessively, it can cause so many different problems, health problems, family problems, etc., etc. Look at verse 10. I have seen the God-given task, which with it says, sons of men are to be occupied. And that phrase, sons of men, just means sinners. Okay, it means people that are not inclined towards God. Okay, I have seen the God-given task which the sons of men are to be occupied. He has made everything beautiful in his time, and he has put eternity in their hearts, except that no one can find out the work that God does from the beginning. Okay? See, the idea is that Solomon looked around, and he sees people, and what condition does he see the sons of men? They're in trouble. Their condition is not a good condition. And then he goes on to say that God has allowed men, okay, God has set in the heart of mankind certain things. And those are things that man pursues for happiness. What are they? Money, fame, all sorts of different little goals that God places in our hearts for us to pursue happiness. And what happens when you pursue that happiness? You never make it. You never get it. And the idea is that if you come to the point of realization where you understand that that won't make you happy, then what will you figure out? That God can make you happy. But you have to get to that point where you figure out that God will make you happy. So what he's saying is that God places these things in our hearts that we pursue, and it's vanity. It's nothing but a bunch of vanity. And, people get educated to be happy. People believe in philosophical beliefs to get happy. People believe in this and they believe in that. It's the idea, life's an orange and I'm going to squeeze it for all it's worth, But life without God is worthless. And how fulfilled do you think, because Solomon, we can make the assumption, at least I can, maybe you can, that Solomon had some issues with his relationship with God. How fulfilled do you think his life was as he got older? I don't think it was very fulfilled. Fulfilling would be a better word. Because did he not squeeze the orange for all it was worth? He squeezed life for all it was worth. He had all the stuff. He had all the toys. He could satisfy himself in any way he wanted, and yet, when he writes the book of Ecclesiastes, he says, vanity, it's all vanity. It's not worth anything. Because he had all those things. He had a boat. He had a couple boats. He had a pickup. I think I've bought 4 pickups in the last 2 years. And none of those things, all they do is run you over, so you got to be careful. Try to get rid of that one, try to kill me. Demon. But
Stayed out from the front of my boat.
you can get all that stuff, but none of that stuff has any value from an eternal perspective. Look at verse 12. I know that nothing is better for them than to rejoice and to do good in their lives. Okay. this is kind of looking at another group of people. I don't know how many people I've talked to over the years that have told me since I got saved that when I talk to them about their salvation, they tell me, I try to do the best I can do, or I try to be the best person I can be. You ask them, do you have a relationship with Jesus Christ? No, but I try to be the best person I can be. Wow, that's quite, oh, that's pretty awesome, man. How's that working out for you? Because, you can rejoice, but in your rejoicing, you rejoice over vanity, because without the Lord there is no good. And they're not doing any good. They just have a philosophy of doing good. And who gets to determine? Who gets to determine? Who gets to determine what the good is? They do. So if you let me determine what my good is, how me acting good, it's like when Christians, here we go. It's like when Christians get too self-absorbed with themselves. I'm going to preach on this, I think Sunday or the following Sunday. I got 2 sermons done, so now I'm getting them confused. But, whenever we get to the mindset that we are able to determine our righteousness, what happens is, whenever we do something real good with it, hey, look at me, man, I'm really good. Then when we do something bad, we just run on by, get on by that. It's it's Sunday. I'm going to talk about taking selfies of ourselves. Does everybody know? Does everybody know what a selfie is?
Yep, I've never done one.
You know what selfies are? No, you don't know what a selfie is? I'm going to demo them. I think I know how to do that. If I don't,
Practice is harder than you think.
huh?
Good at practice is harder than you think.
If I can't do it, my daughter will help.
It's harder.
But we like to take selfies of ourselves. Why? Oh, yeah, no, I'll preach that Sunday. Okay, verse 13. And then he says, and also that every man should eat and drink and enjoy the good of his labor. It is the gift of God. That's kind of, okay. To me, that's a very sarcastic statement. The thought is behind it, eat, drink, and be merry. Okay? And you're familiar with that idea. See, when he says every man, he's saying that every man, and these are people that are under the sun. These are the sons of men, okay? So he doesn't really mean saved people, he just means every man. And then in verse 14, he says, I know that whatever God does, it shall be forever. Nothing can be added to it, okay? And then he finishes, and nothing taken from it. God does it that men should fear before him, okay? See, that's the mindset, okay? Listen to those words again. I know that whatever God does, it shall be forever. Nothing can be added to it, and nothing taken from it. God does it that men should fear before him. I know this person. This is the person who has told me it is not God's will for me to be saved. I know this person.
How do you draw that conclusion out of these verses?
Because he's talking that whatever you determine is God's will, is God's will. You don't know God's will. You have to seek God's will. And what he's saying that whatever God has determined, whatever God does, it shall be forever. So why pray? Again, that's my point again. Why pray? Why seek God's mercy? Why seek God's grace? Nothing, this individual says, Solomon says, Nothing can be added to it, and nothing taken from it. God does it that men should fear before him. Okay? Fear before him. And that's just the way I interpret it. That doesn't mean that interpretation is this, because with Ecclesiastes, there's a lot of different ways to look at it. But it's the idea that an individual's self-interest is what's that word? Sunum bonum of their life. It's a Latin phrase that means the supreme good. It's the highest goal of it's the idea that your interest, listen, if I get to determine what's God's will, whose will is it? It's my will. It's not God's will. This is the idea behind sunum bonum. It means that you get to decide what is the supreme good. And when you do that,
Salvation has to be of works.
yeah, under that, well, and that's how people get into that mindset. I can do it because I know God's will for me. Whenever you think you know His will, then you're going to have issues in your walk, because God is a revealing God. Okay, by His Word, by His Spirit, by your circumstances of your life. He's a revealing God. He's not a God that you can write, well, this is God's will for my life. If He reveals that to you, that's all right. But if you try to live your life by a set of rules and standards, you're going to have a lot of trouble later. Because God has something for you today, and I hope He has something more for you tomorrow. If your walk is the same as it was 10 years ago, guess what? Something's up. You should be holier today than you were yesterday, according to the Word of God. You should have developed a deeper relationship with Him today than you had yesterday, according to the Word of God. Okay? Mary, you have a quizzical look on your
I
face.
do, because I'm now very confused. But if this is talking about non-believers,
Yes?
then they don't even consider the will of God, right?
Oh, yes, they do. Oh, yes, they do. Yeah, they do. Non-believers consider the world. You talked about an atheist today. What's an atheist?
Somebody to convince themselves that there is a God.
Someone that doesn't want there to be a God, but they know there's a God.
But I don't think they're considering the will of that God.
Well, maybe not for an extreme atheist, but most people, when they're even lost people, want to consider themselves to be considered, most people, good people. And how do they determine what good people are?
Usually by comparing themselves. to
Yeah,
bad people.
well, usually what they do, compare themselves to somebody worse.
Yeah.
And they say, I'm not really that bad. But how do they construe what is good and evil? By what?
Their own thing, their works.
Yeah, but what do they bounce themselves off of?
Well, the context of these verses is their works, the things they do.
Yeah, they have a morality picture. And where do they get a morality picture? Where does all good and evil originate? From God. Okay? Even lost people, when I was lost, I considered God's will. I strive to be a better person. I think most lost people try to be better people. Am I wrong?
You have to, because look how many people give to just organizations in America that have nothing to do with God, but they do good works.
I think there's very few totally evil people.
Well, and isn't there scripture, I can't quote any, but isn't there scripture that says that God, when He created us, that He gave us that conscience, our
Yeah.
conscience?
In Romans.
In Romans, it says that He has implanted in each of us a sense of who God is. I've mentioned it numerous times. That's why missionaries go to Africa, to a place where no missionary has ever been, And they tell people about Jesus and they say what? We've already met him. We already know him. And they're living Jesus-led lives. Yeah. Everybody knows good people. And yes, Mike?
Well, how many people that we know of, and when you listen to the news, you always hear statistics that are spouted, that America is a Christian country. Well, what's your definition of Christianity then? How many people are Christ-believing Christians, or how many people desire to have that label attached to them because that makes them a good person?
How do you get somebody to accept Jesus Christ? The first ingredient.
Repent.
They have to know they don't.
They have
Yes.
to know they need a Savior.
There's a need.
If you
They
don't
have
know
to
you're lost,
understand, I am no good. Because you know what? They think they're good.
Well, that's the thing, until we have the mindset that we have to compare ourselves to Jesus Christ,
That's right.
you know, if you're
Because we
comparing
have a-
yourself to Adolf Hitler, you know,
We have a,
then you're good.
yeah. I used to compare my friend, I had a friend, Mike Allison, we used to call him Barney Rubble. He was a short guy. You remember Barney Rubble from the Flintstones? Mike, he went to Pueblo High with me, and he was in our group. And we used to call it group, it wasn't a gang. And Mike quit high school and went in the Army. He was trained in the Rangers, and he came back to Tucson. He got dishonorably discharged. Came back to Tucson and beat up everybody that had ever done him any wrong. Luckily, I hadn't done him any severe wrong. But Mike was a great guy to compare yourself to. See, I'm not like Barney. Mike is in Florence, in the state penitentiary. He killed a drug pusher. He burned his house down. He didn't know the guy was in it. He went to his house to buy some heroin, and the guy wasn't there. Or at least he thought he wasn't there, so he burned his house down, and the guy was there. So he's still in there. And that was 30 years ago, 35 years ago. So we could always point at Barney. Well, we're not as bad as Barney. There's always somebody you're not as bad as, but God intrinsically has placed in us a knowledge of good and evil. And because of the placement of that God, you can call it whatever you want, God gene or whatever, in us, that's how, people used to say, well, it's not fair. Those guys in South America that are in the Brazilian jungle, they're never going to hear about God. So it's not fair. How can God send them to hell? Yeah, he can. Just as easily as he can send somebody that's in church every Sunday and hears the gospel all the time. Because the knowledge of God in the heart, he levels the playing field. It's perfect. Because God is just. God has to be just, because God is just. Big J-U-S-T. So think about that. Ruminate on that, and then you can.
Well, the ones that haven't heard the gospel won't be held at a standard that, like people here in the United States.
Yeah, God's gonna understand where we were and how we were. Amen. Brother Doug?
I have a good friend at the park who I have coffee with often, and we get into some in-depth conversations, and I attempt to witness to, though, who had a father who was the biggest louse in the world, left the family, a couple kids and all, and had this mother who struggled, had no money, and raised her kids well, but didn't know the Lord. And when I try to witness them, somewhere along the line, people stress to him that his mother, not knowing the Lord, is in hell, and he can't accept any God that can't accept his mother.
Yeah.
And I don't know what to say to this guy, I really
Yeah.
don't.
Well, it all devolves to the point where she had to accept Jesus. And
He also can't get over his anger at his father.
yeah, well, that's probably a bigger issue than the other issue, but
When people talk about receiving Jesus, I usually ask them, which one are you talking about? Because a lot of people have different ideas of who Jesus Christ
That's why it's good to have, when you actually try to lead somebody to the Lord, it's good to have like, I was looking at it today, Nikki has it in one of our publications, The Roman Road, where you can actually take things step by step. Is this the Jesus you know? Do you recognize your own sin? Do you know that all have sinned and fallen short of the glory of God? You know, do you understand that idea? Okay, let me go on. Let me go to the next section, which begins with the 16th verse. And this kind of changes then from the idea of fatalism to what I would call egotism. In verse 16, there was no end of all the people over whom he was made king. Yet those, I'm in the wrong verse.
No.
I'm in the wrong chapter. I'm on the wrong side of the book. Moreover, I saw, now he says moreover, so he says moreover, so he's still talking about the same people, and then he says, I saw under the sun, which means a fallen mankind. In the place of judgment, wickedness was there, and in the place of righteousness, iniquity was there, okay? So he's saying, so what does he say? Under the sun, he's saying all men are wicked. Now, you can look at it from two different perspectives, because we all are wicked initially, okay? But you can also look at it from a very cynical point of view. Some might say that all men still are wicked. In the business world, some people function under the assumption that no one is trustworthy. Okay? There's some people like that. There's some people that no matter what deal they strike with you, they are still going to attempt to manipulate you. Okay? They're still going to try to, if you do a service for them, they're still going to try to shortchange you, or they're still going to try to get more from you than you were originally supposed to get. And that is a very, very common business technique, especially in places like Europe. You know, we worked with a lot of dairy families in Clovis, and for some of those dairy families, they were first-generation Americans, and for some of them, when it came to business, it was a cutthroat. It was, it was eat the other guy or be eaten, and they were very, very tough business people. And under that idea, then you could cynically look at people and say, well, everybody's a crook, and that's why I'm a crook. But that's not true. Not everybody's a crook. Not, Romans 3:23, all have sinned and fallen short of the glory of God. But then those that know God have a different mindset. And he kind of continues, look at 17 and 18. I said in my heart, God shall judge the righteous and the wicked, for there's a time there is for every purpose and for every work. For there is a time there for every purpose and for every work. And then 18, I said in my heart, concerning the conditions of the Son of Man, God tests them, that they may see that they themselves are like what? Beasts. Are beasts or animals, okay? So that's an encouraging way of looking at things. And then look at 19, that's a mosquito. 19 and 20. 19, for what happens to the sons of men, okay, also happens to animals. One thing befalls them, as one dies, so dies the other. Surely they have one breath. Man has no advantage over animals. And why? For all is vanity, okay? So, what I think that is expressed there is that man lives for self-interest, living for self, enjoying life for self. And I don't want to give the impression There's things that people get involved in that are good, okay? Athletics are good for you, okay? Art, music, I get involved in music as a kid, I'm still involved in music. Stuff like that, The problem is when they become your life. Education, all of those things are good. They're not in themselves wrong, but if they become
Idols.
yes, very good. Thank you, Gordy. If they become a selfish desire, which would fall under the category of idol, then they're bad for you. And there is not in this particular set of verses 16 through 20, there is no sense of optimism. That one part. For what happens to the sons of men also happens to animals. One thing befalls them, as one dies, so dies the other. I tell you what that is. That you could use, that's like a catchphrase for evolution. It really says that man is a beast. And I've often said that we're not evolved from monkeys, we're devolving to monkeys. But that kind of echoes the idea all we are like animals. And that's such a cynical ego. Actually, I consider it to be an egotistical comment. And it's what causes people to despise each other. It's what causes people, that's what introduced, if you look at the history of the caste system, C-A-S-T-E in India, are you familiar with the caste system? The caste system is founded and grounded in the idea that some people are not as good as other people because of they are stuck in a spiritual rotation that has placed them as beings. For some of them, the untouchables are subhuman. You can't let those people touch you. You can't let those people touch anything that you touch because of their condition. So when you enter into a philosophy such as this, it leads to the idea that one man is better than another man. See, one of the things that made America a great place to be is what our founding fathers wrote, that we are all created equal, okay, with unalienable rights granted to us by God, okay? The idea that we are all equal, not that certain ones of us are greater than others of us. If you believe in what's written here, you would say that when a dog dies, it's the same thing as when a man dies. But there's a pretty big difference. At least as far as their eternity, we would like to believe. The teaching of evolution is pandemic now in the classroom in public schools. You understand that, don't you? That that's what's taught. It is evolution. It is the science of evolution, and then it's the theory of creation. And most places won't, a lot of places won't mention creation, and that's not because some teachers will insert creation into their curriculum where they're allowed to, but most curriculums don't reflect creationism at all anymore. But if you die like an animal, then that means what? That means you don't have a spirit. You don't have to worry about that stuff. You don't have to worry about any of that stuff. And when you observe animal behavior, animals treat each other like animals. Nikki, when Snowbella had her puppies, if you didn't take care of each one of those puppies and try to get them all to cohabitate so they could all eat, the bigger ones would push out the littler ones, hit them with their heads and stuff, and the little one would never get any food, because they're animals. Hopefully that treat each other that way, but the problem is that so much of that mentality nowadays is being taught in our schools. It's the mentality of, it's that word, what's that word? Oh, that word, I hate that word. And they use it in commercials now too. You deserve it. I hate that word. Deserve. You deserve better.
We deserve hell is what we deserve.
Who has determined that they, you deserve this and you deserve that?
That's our entitlement society.
Yeah, exactly. And then the last couple verses, 21 and 2. Who knows the spirit of the sons of men, which goes upward, and the spirit of the animal, which goes down to the earth? So I perceived that nothing is better than that a man should rejoice in his own works, for that is his heritage. For who can bring him to see what will happen after him? Solomon recognizes that there's a difference between man and beast. The man's spirit goes upward, the beast's spirit goes downward, or wherever doggy spirits go. And then, but in other words, in verse 22, life is all, our society so wants you to identify yourself with things that you shouldn't identify yourself with. Our society wants you to believe that you have evolved from animals. Our society wants you to believe that you have the ability to change our environment. Our society wants you to understand that you can be the determining factor in all these different arenas of your life. And that's not to say that you don't have a determination, because God does want you to do things to benefit yourselves. But what's the main purpose of man? It's to glorify God, according to the Westminster Catechism. It's to glorify God. The purpose of man is to glorify God. And if you glorify God, then you don't have to worry about any of those other things, because you're doing those things the way that they should be done. But see, we have a generation of leaders who I think I understand very well, because they're from my generation now. And I remember my generation. I remember my thoughts from my generation. I was a prototypical hippie. I grew up in the south side of town. When they had the riots at the U of A during the Vietnam War, I was at the riots. I didn't know what was going on. I didn't care. I was just breaking windows and trying to steal whatever I could. I remember that lifestyle which said, get whatever you can for yourself. Take whatever you can for yourself. It doesn't matter how you get it, just take it. And now we have a group of our leaders have the same mentality, except our leaders, since some of them have it, they want to give it to everybody. You deserve this, you deserve that. And the thing that's happened is that normalcy, what we would consider to be normal, has become abnormal. And abnormal has become normal. Homosexuality, now you can't, there's some school districts now where you can't talk about, you cannot use the words normal sex together, because that's an insult to abnormal sex. So they are changing the vernacular, they're changing the words you can speak, and what they really want to do, what they're striving to do. And as society becomes more dependent upon the government, they'll change the way you think. Tell you what to think. They will become the thought police. It's, how many of you read 1984?
Oh, yeah.
It's the Orwellian thought police are coming to get you.
That's the scariest book I've ever read in my life.
They're coming to take me away. Ha ha. You ever hear, remember that? All right, what's your comments? I've pontificated enough. Yes?
Just this thing in my mind about how they changed BC to BCE, you know, before, and so now it's, you know. And another thing is, this word multiverse, I'm not sure what it is. They're calling it multiverse now?
Yes, yes.
What is that?
The multiverse, well, it's the panorama of everythingism.
Everything is.
It's not the universe, it's the multiverse. Have you ever heard of the multiverse? There isn't a universe anymore, now it's a multiverse.
That's because there's more light out there.
Huh?
That's because there's more light out there.
And they're coming too.
Yeah.
They're coming to take us away.
Ha-ha.
What else?
Ronnie was about 16 and he walked into his mother and told him he was going to Woodstock.
Oh, I bet you that went well. What'd you say, Grandma?